You are listening to the Firecracker Podcast with Tony Rico.
It's a familiar old voice. Lucas, we miss so much. Well, usually I say welcome sports fans, but today it's welcome back to the Firecracker Softball Podcast. You can feel the excitement in the room, I'm sure. So, guys, it's been a while. Got Mr. Brashear with us. Sean, it's been a while since we've done this.
One, like in this.
This is
studio?
the first one of the kind of the rebirth. I don't know what the word is, and don't run with that one. But
I got some things.
We've only done one podcast in here, and that was with Tony Medina and Vic Wan with the old setup, and
Gotcha.
then we've been on a little hiatus for a couple of years, people. So we are really glad to be back. I am Coach Tony. We've got our vice president and my brother in softball, Sean Brashear, with us, and then we've got a third party. I don't know. You're not a sidekick because you're really kind of a key component. So we've got Mr. Ben Pasco, who's going to be kind of like the glue, the central nervous system, the key operator. No pressure, Ben. But joining us to kind of keep the podcast rolling a little bit, and we're just going to talk about things that are relevant, not just talk about ourselves. We will tell a story or two about the things that we're involved in, but hopefully everything and anything that we talk about really relates to anybody that might be listening. And I always like to say that if I'm you, I understand if you're skeptical, you're pessimistic, and Rico's all about the money and Sean cusses too much. So, all right, let's just get that out in the open. But before we get to that,
I don't believe it.
Ben, I want to welcome you because when people start to understand the truth of kind of what happened with our story, the expansion wasn't anything that I tried to bring about. I really tried to deny it, but you were one of the first, if not the first, to kind of come in and want to join the Firecrackers. And so you were really the reason why, for me, understanding that it wasn't about hitting ground balls to multiple teams and teaching individual kids how to hit, but it was about building cultures. So I just want to say thank you to you because I'm certainly like a lot of people. You think you know everything. You think you know what you're doing. I was really kind of closed-minded, but you appealed to me in a way that when I was shooting people down left and right for whatever opportunity they would offer me, when I shot you down, it's not that I felt bad, but I felt like I'd like to work with this guy. And so here we are, I don't know, 15 years later, but you've coached a team. You've been through this, so a lot of this stuff is relevant to you as well too. There's going to be times when we go to you about your experiences that you can share with other coaches as well. But you're in a new hat now. You're wearing a new hat, right? No longer coaching?
No.
So tell me what it is that you'd like to do as far as your new involvement, your new role. When you talk to me about, hey, Cap, I'd like to just be part of what's going on with the team. And so what were you thinking? How's it going so far with that?
Well, it's kind of a personal story. Like you said, I got sick with cancer. So that was my journey for the last 2 years. Decided there was just too much stress in coaching, but I wanted to be involved. Like I said, I've been part of your organization for 13 years. And I just kind of wanted to stay around the game.
Yeah.
So that was when you said that Lucas was moving on and moving across the country. I just kind of said, maybe I can slip right in there and learn from you. Because having my own team for 13 years, I don't think I ever watched you practice. I don't think I ever really saw a game. So to be a fly on the wall the last year and a half has been eye-opening.
And honestly, like, you're just being honest, and I always say that's beautiful because it creates context. So as soon as you share just a little bit of your personal story, someone's got to go, okay, not just another dopey softball coach. Because I feel like when we talk about softball only, people see us as softball coaches or anybody in the industry. You don't really realize everyone has a story. So thanks for that. Not going to put you on the spot, have you kind of have to talk too much, but I appreciate that. And then really excited about whatever's around the next corner, because it wasn't your professional qualifications that put you in this position for the new media, man. It's
absolutely
more like,
not.
You're like the new sheriff in town. You're sitting in the chair, so get ready. And Mr. Brashear, so boy, quickly, you and I have known each other a long time. We've told this story before, so we don't need to go back, but just, it's been also a long road, 13 years?
13 years, yeah.
Same.
The fall of 2010.
It's kind of like dog years, right? So you've been coaching. People have been together in the softball industry 13 years. That's like 75, I think, right? So even because, again, I think longevity in relationships is something to stand for. So again, my appreciation for you, my thankfulness for you, and our own learning curve. And I kind of wanted to pull this up to the surface because I think, like, what do people talk about? What, when our name comes up, there are those that know us, There are those that know of us, and there's those probably two different perceptions. So I'll start with yours first. I'll give both perceptions, but I'm going to talk on yours first. So the first one that you may or may not hear, if you know Sean, and if not, this might surprise you a little bit. Brashear cusses too much. His favorite word starts with an F, and it's not just the firecrackers. And so rather than you explain that, I'm going to explain that. In my opinion.
Is that for language purposes? So you doing the explaining?
Well, just because I want to keep it clean so that there's no profanity in the explanation.
Okay.
But really, it's to understand perception, right? So to give everyone the right entitlement and understand that they have their opinion and they can draw anything from it, like what they think of you, me, or anybody else, right? But I ask people like to just not get lost in the obvious and the easy one, because I think what people don't realize is there's a lot of people in softball that put stuff out there so that you grab it and you kind of buy that, but there's a lot more depth behind it. So we can go into Marty Tyson and we can go into a lot of guys as far as like what people think of them on the outside versus what they really are. The biggest thing that I want to mention to all of you, and this is something for all of our coaches to keep in mind, is when you watch the relationship between Sean and his players, the first thing you notice is the care and the love. And I've been mentioning on our coaches meetings about just noticing since we've been working together how much you tell your kids you love them. Again, I'm not going to drop his name too many times, but Marty Tyson is another one that does that. He tells his kids that he loves them. So in the end, it doesn't excuse a behavior or something that someone might not prefer, and they're just different, they live life, but it does explain something. And for me, it explains the most important part about what we do in our business, and that is relationships. That in the end, none of your players look offended, have a look on their face whenever this comes up in conversation, because then it would almost be like, yeah, dad drinks a little much and we just deal with it, because then there's that look. And so I got to be honest with you, I haven't had that once, not even once. And I'm not surprised by that because I've been around the game a long time. But that's kind of the first thing, whether there might be one or two others with you, is as far as the profanity. It's out there. It's not right. Do we do it all the time? Well, we do it. Let's just say we pick our spots with it. But I want people to know that, no, that doesn't define Sean at all. In fact, that's just what you may hear. But when we're out there, we're in our personas. And sometimes you do have to disrupt a little bit. Not condoning it, but just get people to understand it, maybe look past a little bit. So if you're out there and you see us on the ball field and you come up to our dugout and you maybe hear a little colorful language, and it's not just from Sean, it's from myself or anyone else, but we're talking about these perceptions. Just take a look around, take a look at the kids. Do they look displaced? Do they look like they're kind of caught off guard a little bit? But it's just all part of it. So that would be it. Then the one that I can never really speak to in my own way, but if you don't know me, well, then I must be all about the money. So in your personal experience with me, a few years now?
Well, again, I would say when I came to you, which is how it started, which is how the majority probably, if not all the teams that are in the organization, have been in the organization, have become, probably including Ben, was us, looking for some guidance, looking for some opportunities to find a better knowing of how to do things. What levels of value that was, where that meant to an expense. I'll be honest, I don't think anybody had an idea, let alone me. So to know that you opened up so many doors for so many people, just to kind of start to take this into a place to where we were benefiting the whole softball market, families, athletes. And that's really what has started. Like, it's changed how the whole sport and the development of not only them on the field, but them in the whole sense of a softball journey has been changed. And that happened because of you, right? And the idea of how that happens, of like, it's almost like I ran a repair facility for years. And there's the guys that are out there and they work their tails off and they're lifting boxes and they're doing things day in and day out. That's very tangible, right? You can see what that is. And then we have the guys that have worked for our company that have created different levels of value without ever lifting a box. And I think for people to kind of understand the ideas of how this has been, and for me, I've always known from the first moment I met you that you were going to make an impact into the things that I could potentially do and learn. And doesn't mean I do everything the same way you do it. Obviously, my language is different, but I think for the understanding of that, like your care to making that impact in our sport, I think that's where, kind of similar to my, you spoke of the athletes. Your care is about the sport. That goes deeper than myself. It goes past you. It goes past Ben. It goes past all the players that were before, after, because no matter what, we're going to be gone at some point, and the sport needs to be in a better place. And I've heard you say that many times. So the idea of that, to me, I know what that means to you. I know what you feel your calling is. At least I feel like I do. And I think that from those that have been around it, and I'd maybe let Ben speak to this, we see where that has transitioned for the sport. And I believe if Marty was sitting in here, if Mike was sitting in here, if any others from any part of the market was sitting in here, they would speak to that level of impact that you've had that's gone past, again, hitting fungo for 15 hours out on a field. So if anybody can't really understand it, you're probably today, as a 10-year-old parent with a family going all over the place, impacted to a better place of softball journey and opportunity than what we were provided when our daughters were 10. And it starts with what you really kind of initiated for our sport. So I don't know if that speaks to that. And I know, again, how much that means to you.
Well, it's more about purpose and passion, because I appreciate that. And, to use your daughters as examples, the template that we walked into, because we do this, why do all coaches coach? Because they love it, right? They step forward. Certainly there was no business component to it. But if Jess or Amanda stepped into your shoes, is this structured in a way that you're like, yeah, you have a good situation? You'd be like, no, I don't want you to be out of pocket 10 grand a year. I don't want you to, you have no problem helping people. As most coaches, you have no problem helping people. But when I ask coaches to look at that, is that something you would want to pass on? Because that financial strain to coaches, that is always there. And I think the other thing that affected me was in the lot of years that we've been around this game, is the good people that gave their time, never expected anything, then passed away. Numerous coaches. And we as an industry don't remember them. And not they weren't doing this to be remembered. But what is our responsibility, or if you talk about the legacy of how you keep those that are gone kind of alive, right? It's okay, so they're physically not here, but we talk about them. We talk about what they taught us. We talk about the things that they gave us. And there are so many people that have things to offer. And the road that you and I have been on, because I'm going to say between us, on a scale from 1 to 10, our confidence level's a 10, both of us. So that's not always easy to put in the same room. And, why have you not taken off and split and done your own thing like dozens of people have mentioned you? And why have I not told you to hit the road like maybe some people have told me to do with you? Well, because in the end, I like to believe, then you can expound on this quickly and then we'll move on to some other things. But it's too obvious. Just because there's two quarterbacks in the room doesn't mean it has to be a negative thing. I think it comes down to like your own personal security. Are you comfortable when there's somebody that can take care of their own business next to you? Because there's a lot of people that aren't comfortable. For whatever reason, they get threatened. So it was a real interesting journey to get to this point to where, is it really going to work long-term for you? Because that's really what I want from my heart, as you mentioned, for anybody. It's not a personal thing for you, Ben, or anyone else. It's for people in general. Now the personal tie to it is you guys. But also, is it going to work for me? Because in the end, if it doesn't work for me, it's, we're both tolerating stuff that doesn't work. And I don't want to be in this business to tolerate. I don't want you or anyone to be in this business to tolerate. I don't want anyone to just survive in this business. I want us to thrive. So, we both had our, it's not even ups and downs. We've both had our tests in this relationship. And I just got to tell you right now that we started the Select program, and from right here, I guess a couple of people have heard about it. So, we've decided to join forces. And there was just one clear statement when I remember calling you about this, and we talked about a lot of things that day. But and this is something I want people to be able to get to this point. You said, bro, I would do anything to just have the best team on the field. And it's like putting team first or the company first. And not because you have to, because I would never want that. But when you said that, it almost like just cleared the slate of like, there's no agenda here. There's no anything. It's not about me. It's not, let's just do this the right way, because everything else is working out, right? And so the Select program, which I'll get into a little bit more coming up, has just been an awesome experience. But we had a new dynamic. So select program being what? We've decided now to take a few of the successful brands inside the Firecrackers. So it's not just what we've done historically, and it's not just what you've done, which has been an incredible job. And how I even challenged you probably 12 or 13 years ago to make your name and go out and build your brand, which you have done an amazing job. But also pulling in Randy Huge. And then we've got TJ, and we've got other coaches that have done a really good job. So we've decided that even though the individual brands within our brand have been doing well, and they've earned their respect out there, which is important, let's put them all together. An interesting dynamic, though. And we were just talking before the podcast about, who knows, who should know, who even cares. But then you decided to relocate. And so you're no longer a Southern California resident. So now it's really out there. Sorry, Sean. I just thought I'd throw that out there. But, you gave me a reason, one of the reasons why you moved to another region. And that had to do with your parents, right? So tell me about that a little bit, about being the opportunity to relocate, and tell me how your family tied in to that decision, because I thought it was pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I don't tear up during this part, but I've always kind of been intrigued by the idea of, maybe living somewhere else, and having grown up in SoCal, I love it, but at the same time kind of experiencing something different. And back during COVID, my dad, he's wanted to move as well, and he finally convinced my mom to move out to Tennessee. So they moved out there during the COVID period in 2020. And then he just started talking to me about it and things of that nature. And then kind of simultaneously, whatnot, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that was a tough time, because now they had just moved, and, as a family, that's obviously like a horrific moment to hear. And, thankfully she's doing great and everything. The prognosis is great. And so it's really good stuff. So things just kind of tied in. And I'm not saying that to get over emotional to it, as much as just knowing like how much my parents mean to me. And I even, like, when you talked about the idea of being in this program and not leaving the program. So my dad was in the military. And so, I mean, if we weren't out of bed by 7 every morning and doing something, like, he was going to probably hit me. It was allowed back in those days.
Right.
So I think even now, like to this day, I think a lot of the stuff that I do is out of respect to him, out of respect to the way that he saw things. And it's funny, the older I get, the more I realize I'm a lot like him, even though when I was younger, I used to do nothing but pretty much complain probably about him. And then the idea of being around my parents and seeing my mom and being able to get to, be with her, they're both in their 70s now. And so, pray, knock on wood, 20 to 30 more years of lots of good stuff. But, again, it was really for the opportunity of, to spend time with my family. I've spent 17 years basically every single day of my life going to a softball field or to a cage or to a facility, and to try to help and teach as many as I could to make an impact. And I'm still am. I believe that, and I still find my ways of having to do this, and it's definitely learning as I'm going. But I also know how important it is to have the time with my parents and to be around my mom and dad and to spend Thanksgiving with them and all these things. So, and again, not to be over emotional, but just being very real. You know what I mean? I love my parents, and I love the fact that I've gotten to have this time. And then once my dad went, it really just kind of opened it up. And then the idea of, getting a place was almost even a little bit first thinking about maybe the future. And then because of certain things that I spoke about, the future became a little bit more now, because what is their future, and what time is that for me? So I made the choice, and, and I'm engaged to a wonderful woman who I love, and I'm
who would have
thunk?
Lucky.
Yeah, Sean.
What were the Vegas odds on that 5 years ago?
Well, hopefully she doesn't, figure this out, I guess. But no, I've been very lucky and she's in a position with her career that it just kind of all worked itself out, to where we were in a position to be able to do this, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity. And so far, I'm not hating all the flights too much, but it's definitely different, and again, we'll see. There's no, we still have a place out here to potentially come back to if that's the scenario and whatnot. Obviously, my girls live out here, and so still got other family that live out here, so opportunities to come back is easy, right? So and stay with them or whatnot. So, but I'm enjoying it.
So part of that is anything is possible, right? Anything is possible, because I think that's an important mindset to keep, especially in softball. But bro, I wanted people to hear you and how you felt about your family, because to be able to prioritize your family, since we've known each other, we've experienced the death of our parents, and it's a cycle of life. So I just think that's awesome, and we want our kids that play this sport to be able to design their lives to a point to whatever they do prioritize, that they're able to do that, and they're not a victim to their circumstances, meaning they don't have flexibility or whatever it is. So now watching you, so that kind of explains. So was your dad a big influence? And I would imagine your work experience. I never would have guessed or would have known that you're so damn structured and organized, and you run a really tight ship. So I'll just be honest with you. I mean, you've been our vice president, but this company would be probably 10 times more successful if you were the president and I was a VP, because you're amazingly structured and you manage. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the brands, because the brands inside the Firecrackers, the brands inside softball, the personal brands, the coaching brands, we have umbrellas, and it started with you. But now we have multiple areas and people to look at that are developing their own success, because to me, there's no limits to this stage. It's like a digital thing. There's no ends to it, right? And so now you're managing your brand and managing your people from another state. What is the key to that? And I'm going to guess it was the structure that you put in place, that you were here on a day-to-day basis, kind of like, tilling the land and growing that and then getting to a place. But now you're managing it from another state. So you've got a lot of people that you're working with. So what is that like? And then as far as managing people and managing a brand, what does that take so that coaches that aspire to have what they see others have, and we want them to realize it's possible, because you're doing it from another state.
Right.
Not that this is a 10-year plan, but okay, these coaches are right here near their people. So what does it take? Because I think you do an amazing job of that.
Well, thank you. The biggest thing I think is just communication and the willingness to talk, even if it's not everything everybody wants to hear, but just kind of communicate and be on top of things. When I first started, there was no plan for me to do this. And I think that's the other part. So none of this is like, I'd love to sit here and say, oh, like this was a structured plan. Like, no, I had two daughters. Leo O'Brien, who was on a podcast,
Yep.
or on a coach's call with us. She played with my sister. My sister and her were best friends. My sister was in her wedding, all this kind of stuff. So I grew up loving the sport. I had two daughters, so obviously I'm gonna go to softball. I played baseball, so I go to softball. I just wanted to win every game. We played against Mark Campbell and all those. His daughter, Jamie was
One of the
Amanda.
greatest, right?
Yep. And he I think that motivation early was just to have the best team, compete, try to win. And then it just kind of continued to grow into learning how much I loved all of what this sport brings, and the relationship side of it, and the things that with the athletes, to where it continued to just kind of grow and grow and grow. And then seeing the impact that kind of what I do, and I can't even tell you what it is, because
but I'm going to call it moving the ball. So I'm going to say the first thing, because I see where you're going with this, and it wasn't so much structure first. It wasn't a structure or a box that you stepped into, but this is something that we would encourage coaches to know, that you have the ability to move the ball. Lots of people talk about, I want the ball. How come I don't get the ball, right? The ball's in your hands. You can put the ball in your hands in this industry. You move the ball. So you talk about you didn't know where you were going, but you move forward and watching all this stuff. So the first few years you were figuring it out, and then you started to create this culture.
And it just continued to grow. And I think with that, it allowed me to kind of start to see a vision of where there was something for me within the sport and how I could grow that. And then along the way, I'm very fortunate. My daughter was going to Chino High. Mike Smith is the head coach at Chino High School. And, Amanda goes in there. I didn't even speak to Mike before the tryout, none of that. I didn't do any of that stuff. I remember Amanda saying to me, that, rumors are Mike's mean. And by the way, Mike is mean, blah, blah, blah. So she goes, and I said, look, there isn't a coach out there that doesn't like good players. You go do what you do, and I'm sure things will be okay. And, 2 weeks later, she comes home, and Dad, I made varsity, and, she's a freshman and whatnot. And I was like, wow, surprise, a coach likes a good player. And within that, Mike asked me to end up helping as it grows. And here we are now 10 years later, and Mike and I are great friends and grown in this. But what I've been able to learn from Mike, right? So I've been just so blessed. Doug Myers comes in, Steve Harrington comes in, all these different people that have had so much success in the sport. And I'm able to kind of see and hear and watch what they do, just like watching you. And then I'm plagiarizing the shit out of everybody, right? Like I just take what I like from everybody and then make it to.
I'm kind of realizing
Yeah.
you have collected some of the greatest coaches in your little coaching umbrella that have been in the game. The most experienced, Rick Robinson, Norco,
I met
are you
him.
kidding me?
Yep.
And then go to, we always go to the central nervous system or the people that we rely on the most to keep things going. So, I mean, we have to mention Roman speaking of this, and how,
And then the Thornburg side came with Mark. And Roman, and so all of those things just continue to pulsate, right, and just become its own life. The whole idea of whatever Brashear even means. And like I said, at the end of the day, I know it means something to the families and the athletes. That's why for me, I want that to happen. It matters to me because it matters to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If it didn't matter to them, then this wouldn't be possible,
Right.
because I can't just sit up here and make it happen or wish it to happen. It has to really actually become. And so even being now in Tennessee, I feel like and we'll see it Friday night. We have our Christmas party and we have 400 and some odd people coming, including Ben. Oh no, Ben's not coming. Never mind. I was hoping he was going to come. And we want to be able to show the families, because it's hard to get to them all the time. You know that better than anybody. Like, how am I going to really impact every single athlete that's in the program on a day in, day out basis, right? That's like virtually impossible, physically impossible. So the idea of how to find the ways to get to them and to make an impact on them is something that I'll be honest, I feel like I'm still trying to every day learn, like to best recognize. And now being out of state, going back to the original part of the question, it's even harder, right, to know. And I definitely would say it's still a learned type thing, to where like, okay, is this going to challenge those teams to where maybe they don't feel as if this is ideal for them, right? I try to make it and spend every second I can to benefit them. I think Roman would tell you the amount of hours that I put in a day, even if I'm not on a softball field, that's to make this program better and to provide something that's going to impact every family that's in our program. That means something to me. And so I think, but again, to kind of know like what to do every day is I try to just make sure you say, fertilize the garden, water the garden. Like I try to tend to it. I try to make sure there's a text message, a call. I'm looking on there. The good thing about today, you can watch games online so easily. So I can watch these teams play without being there. Right. It's not 15 years ago where you actually had to take your lawn chair and go to the field, right? Like you can literally watch games and you can text them after and get, some communication and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just kind of adapting to the kind of the environment, the steps that you need to take to be there. And I would say this, I feel as if the connections we have with each of our teams is very strong. Now, they behind the scenes may say something a little bit different. I don't know, but I know this and the vibe that, again, this Christmas party is kind of a test, right? You put something together. Mm-hmm. There's an expense that has to be covered because there's a venue, there's catered food, there's a professional DJ, and it's not. We don't mandate it. We had 430 people made the choice, right. And to me that means something, because I feel like that tells me that they feel good and they're excited to be part of what they're part of. And so now it's my job to deliver, right? To find a way to deliver.
Well, it seems like the engine of the Brashear brand is established. So you've got a lot of working pieces that move, and so it's there. You were mentioning earlier about what I'm about and where my passion is, and you just mentioned something about, because I think you do realize this, but I just realized this in listening to you. Your influence doesn't have to come from every word out of your mouth and what you do on a day-to-day basis, because you've done enough of that encapsulates your teams. They're surrounded by it. So like the perception that they used to be or still is of our team, and then yours, is it a cult or is it a culture? And those are really close, similar, but a cult has a crazy leader dictating to people where they're going to go, right? And a culture is an environment of people. And part of this is, and this speaks to the people that were close to us and kind of know our brands and different things like that, the Brashear identity and the Brashear brand inside the Firecrackers was its own entity. But I purposely wanted that and needed you to do that so that there was no ambiguity and that it was clear that you did this on your own. So that there was no, he allowed you to build your brand, but he did it. You know what I mean? No. You had your own separate stage like Coachella or anything, and you just did this whole thing on your own. And now your kids just know that your name's on it. And that's what they appreciate. Now, how does this relate to everybody else listening? Because who the heck wants to hear about Rico and Brashear talk about themselves? It's not about that. It's about a story that we're sharing with others, because we know generally how many people would love to be in the positions that we are. And it's possible. It's absolutely possible. So let's talk a little bit about how you've seen the firecracker culture grow in 13 years. And Ben, if you want, you can chime in as well too, because think of coaches that were here and not here anymore, but they all contributed, right? And think of coaches that were here back then and still here. Not a lot. We've kind of went through a list of potential 10-year coaches, which you guys are way past. And then you've got some new ones that have kind of come in and kind of done things. So what have you kind of seen as the culture has kind of evolutionized, and others have kind of found their space to create their own brand inside our brand?
Wow. I think the growth of it has been felt, like I said, in a way, going back to what we talked about when speaking about you, where I feel like it's impacted it to what kind of now is almost like expected learned behavior, to where like this is just what you do now when you are in softball, meaning like organizations, uniform, helmet, like the whole way of it back. I mean, Ben could say we were trying to find our own, uniform person, right, to get embroidery done. I mean, and now every organization is operating, honestly, like an organization. In the old days, like a business. In the old days, there was organizations, but they were unorganized, right? So the idea of so to me, I think the culture has become the standard, right? And then the standard becomes the standard, to where like in this organization is the standard, because at every level of everything, everyone looks to what you presented to be kind of like the template. And if it's ever, and I think that's a lot of on your shoulders, because obviously people look for that to fall, right? They look for any little thing to kind of pick on. So maybe I took it a different direction, but I kind of look at it from those families. Like, and it's actually been good, I think, for all these, for the coaches, I know even for me, to where, I think you told me Randy Kay said something about this before, about knowing like if you're the one that's going to get the blame as opposed to him being the one to get the blame.
It was beautiful.
So
shout out to Randy Kay.
I love you, Randy. Is knowing what that means, because you took it and presented it to everyone on how to do this, right, in some form or fashion, and it wasn't there before, and everybody was, and in some places, if they're smart enough to know how to follow it and read it, like, and find it, like you could basically be a travel ball coach because there's a guide now. Before there wasn't a guide.
Well, I think 90% of the dads that get into coaching travel ball, we all come from All Stars Rec Ball, and you have your own team, local team, and then you gave me the opportunity to kind of latch on to a culture. And that's why I've been here for 13 years, is the way you teach, the big picture. It's like no other organization as far as I'm concerned. I've lost coaches, good coaches, because they're like, Ben, Tony doesn't do this. Tony, I go, it's not Tony's responsibility. Tony gave us the template. Mm-hmm. It's like a Starbucks. Everyone's their own franchise, and you take what you want, you take what works for you, and you try to be successful with it.
And I think that's a good point, Ben, because, and I understand that. My goodness, the last thing I would ever tell anyone is that I've got all the answers for you. It's really about creating a perspective that doesn't look at what you don't have and what people aren't doing for you. That's a perspective. I get it. All of you out there, I get it. I understand you. But if that was the end of the road, we wouldn't be here, because there's always someone to say, especially in softball, who didn't do what for us, or this, the ability to navigate inside softball is like our number one responsibility. Now we have two choices. I can mandate it, and I can tell you what to do, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, our good friend and business partner, Mike Stith, does that with the Bat Busters. They're compliant. They follow his lead, and it works for them. Culture for me is something different. I didn't grow up needing to be the guy and wanting to be the guy. I grew up in a family that we were fortunate to be gifted, but the number one purpose for our family was to provide happiness for people. So we had gatherings. So that culture aspect of it, I'd never really seen it. And me coming up in the 90s, I would kind of look at the teams, and I would look at maybe who the best coaches were, and I'd be like, really? Like, almost like, if you invite me to your house, and then I'm just watching you parade around about how great your house is. And I never feel like a guest. I'm supposed to be feeling like I'm lucky to be in your house. And then I get to watch you parade around. And it's nothing personal. But I was like, this is it? Like, all of these people that are spending 40-something weekends a year are working to get to these places where I don't feel like we're being appreciated. So in the end, we just cleaned out the loft over at the Huntington Beach warehouse. So we're out of that original
End
place.
of an era.
Big, yeah. But all of the reminders of the success on the field, that in the end, when it comes down to, well, do we keep these trophies or we throw them away? And we threw a lot of the lesser significant ones away because they really didn't mean anything. They were part of the story, but what I couldn't throw away are some of these pictures and of the people that we've had. So it's kind of, that's a perspective. And as I think about, you're on our calls every week with the coaches meetings, and that's been, again, Tim Gorman came into the Firecrackers during COVID and came out of nowhere. And man, I tell you, I don't know what we would have done. We would have done something, but he came in and helped us restructure. And one of the biggest things that Tim gave us towards during his time with us is the importance of meeting, getting online, creating kind of some structure and networking. And so the Firecracker coaches meetings on Tuesdays still exist, and they're on Tuesdays at noon Pacific time, so in the middle of the workday. But every week we've got about 50 coaches that are on there. And okay, we could say, yeah, there should be 250, but no, that's not how this works. It's not a secret society. It's just not mandated. We don't want to force people to do things. So just like you mentioned, the Christmas party or anything in the Firecrackers. When I think about what I've seen inside our brand, we didn't create the Tony Medina brand. He already had it. He already had his D-Up brand, and that was in existence when he came here. But now the collaboration of those two brands, and kind of watching us kind of joke around like he's a softball rock star, only because he has this tour where he doesn't travel because his team's playing in different states. Right. He's traveling because he's in demand to run his camps. And there's nothing else like that. Like, not like that, and then still overseas, and he manages his own team. And I feel comfortable enough to speak for Tony that the number one driver for him is happiness and fun. Don't forget that, because again, we tend to watch who has, whether it's championships or whatever. There are so many people in softball that, I can go around, right? And you start going around, you don't want to forget someone. So someone start mentioning names, they're going to be, oh man, that sucker didn't mention me or whatever, screw Rico. So I just want to be careful about that. But we have so many people that are doing so well. But the most recent one, and I mentioned on the coaches call yesterday, was Tyler Black, who's one of our coaches in the Carolinas. And he started a podcast. And I've watched the evolution of his podcast. And so you were traveling yesterday. And he had, most recently, he had Michelle Smith on one of his podcasts. And he asked like amazing questions. I mean, he got some really good information from her on how she constructed her work regimen, her training according to when championship time was, and endurance, and sometimes pitching endurance. Did a great job. So I just sent him a note, told him how proud I am of him. And his last sentence to me was, "I'm not afraid to be me anymore." And I was like, I'm just gonna say it. I was like, "Fuck, are you kidding me?" Like, that was powerful. If we know that there's a strong fear factor, whether it's your own personal confidence you're trying to get through, right? The young ladies that we coach, can you imagine, like, if person after person, team after team, coach after coach, culture after culture, region after region, more people would say, "I'm not afraid to be me anymore. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I don't have to hate you. I'm not afraid anymore." And that was so powerful because I felt like you could see that inside Tyler's delivery. He's been with the Firecrackers, I think, less than a couple of years. So it's not about what the Firecrackers have done from Tyler. It's about this network of people that we get together with. So how would you describe the coaches' meetings as far as what takes place? Because someone might think it's just Tony talking for an hour straight, and I'm always ready to. But what do you see going on with those meetings?
Again, and to me, that's what that culture is. It's the idea of others feeling good about who they are, what they're part of, and what it can provide for them and their others, and taking that and getting on there and learning from someone. And again, sometimes it's you, Sometimes it's not you. It's whoever's on the podcast or I'm not the podcast, but the coaches call, whether it's a guest, whether it's one of the other coaches. And, so for me, a lot of times, like I'm a lot of times literally doing other things, but I'm listening to it and whatnot. And I'll stop literally and sit back down just to take in where that topic may go, whether it's Adam or whoever it may be. So I think the idea of understanding what culture is, culture is when you can believe in what you're part of and you're willing to listen and take from what's there because it's for the right reasons. It's pulsating health for like our families. And to me, that's what the Firecrackers have always presented. It's been to the families, to their coaches, to provide something. And I think that the deeper that it's in, we had Juju at a game and she spoke to our players and she bleeds it and breathes it. And you could feel it from her when she was speaking. And to me, it's because the investment was there and kind of going to what, and is it Tyler? Because I don't want to mess up Tyler. He spoke about is her willingness to not be afraid to be herself, right? And
himself.
Well, no, but Juju.
Oh,
meaning
yeah,
like Juju's a representation
right. Oh, yeah.
of that. So
1,000%.
I was stealing from what he spoke to. It was like Juju is unafraid to be Juju, and to me, there's nothing more beautiful than a strong, confident young woman. When they stand in that, and meaning speaking kind of softball perspective, right? Sure. When you watch her walk onto a field. Not the tallest, right? Not the strongest, not the fastest, or however you do it. But you watch her walk on a field, you know exactly how she feels. And she feels confident and belief. And that, to me, that is what the culture has provided.
And that's off the field as well.
And it's available to all of us.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, and that's off the field. And yeah, she's a good softball player, great softball player. So you could say that, but that was Juju, in 8 years old, 9 years old,
right.
Walking into, batting cages and whatnot. It was there. So I think the culture comes from your leadership, but it's also letting others kind of do what they do. When you talked about Tony, and I've heard so many stories about his fielding classes and the camps that he runs, and just the energy and the passion that are there. And it's allowing these athletes, because a lot of times the athletes aren't allowed, right, to just kind of be free.
Right.
They're, because we're always wanting to kind of correct or teach, and we're coaching.
Lovingly coach.
So allowing them to do it. So, I think Tony does a great job of utilizing the idea of like player involvement as part of what he does, because I've never met a kid and talked to him about going to Tony Medina stuff and felt like they didn't have a great time and that they didn't enjoy being with Tony. And that's not always the case, even if they are on a good program. And I talked to a kid and it was like, well, yeah, our team's really good, but that was like going to the dentist.
Right.
It wasn't a lot of fun.
It is the party, the recess, the carnival meet softball, right? Which is very powerful because there's different groups that we work with. If you're fortunate enough to work with the elite, that's a different ambition, right? But the elite, that's a very small percentage. It's not the majority of softball. So is the majority of softball or softball players, do they know their value? Do they feel value? And so, mentioning, Julia Jimenez, third base for Utah, watch her this year. You're going to see what Sean talks about. And her confidence is the same off of the field. She very lovingly told our team, kind of gave her their opinion, or gave them her opinion of kind of what she saw, but was encouraging them to express themselves. And what didn't happen to her inside this brand or culture is she didn't get stifled and stuffed. She was allowed to be herself. So now, she's all 5 foot whatever of herself, but she walks around like she's 10 foot tall. And that's really the confidence that I'd like to say that you see in your daughters that have went through this sport. I was fortunate enough to be down in Puerto Vallarta with Sean when Amanda played her first games at Maryland, and then fortunate enough to be big part of your daughter's development and see everything with Jessica and see her graduate and go on through a great college career and a thriving young woman now. And so ultimately that's the big picture. And I'm going to say that's a denominator for all coaches. Every coach in softball loves to see their players grow and become people. So the biggest thing that I would encourage people to remember is keep assessing the relationship, and to thine own self be true. Know when you need to communicate with a kid because they need to be okay with us. So we might be okay with 12 out of 13 players, but it's that one. Just check in with them. Checking in, checks and balances. I have it. I need it. Are think we all need it. We all need someone, especially when, go back to the captain of your own ship a statement way back when. But everyone needs a voice of, hey, right? That's enough. I would say, I have barometers around here. Norm was a really quiet barometer, but I could always tell. Coach Don is a quiet barometer. Melinda's a quiet barometer. Robin's not a quiet barometer, but Robin really doesn't let me know. You know, she's pretty much gonna stay out of that lane. But we need people, and there's a phrase that I use, and it's called the shoe fits, and it could be almost a segment on a podcast where we talk about things, and I would say, if this shoe fits you, if we're talking about something that you're sitting there listening going, oh man, he's talking about me. We're not calling you out. We're not talking about you. Your experience might be inside the story that we're talking about, but if the shoe fits, and you know, so we'll say this right now, we love you and we want success for all of you coaches. Like, this is what we want. We want you to have your own version of your own success that's similar to the level of fulfillment and constant work that we put into our own, and we want that. So if we can, as your buddy, right, the way a buddy might say to you, hey, you didn't need to have those extra 4 shots of tequila. Thank you for the tequila, by the way. Shout out to Sean's Christmas present. You tone it down a little bit on her. And to not tell that person to take a fucking hike, because you're in your moment. We all have egos, right? And I'll say mostly guys, and whoever else the shoe might fit. Have someone that can check you, because I understand, as you understand, we can't make everybody happy to their expectations. But I do promise every coach this, and anybody that's listening, I don't care whether you're a coach, a parent, or even a player that might be tuning in. You can absolutely create your own success. And those things and people that you see as obstacles or reasons why you don't have what you want, it doesn't end there. I'm not the obstacle that's going to stop you. If you know a coach that badmouths me because of what he didn't get in the Firecrackers, I would ask you to ask that coach, did you ever have a conversation with Tony? Did you ever go and tell him what you just told me? Did you ever say to him what you just said to me? Because if you would have, you probably would have been surprised how that conversation would have went. Now, there's an is what it is, and it's business is business. We all know how to get there. I remember I was told once that I could be extremely cold, you know. I would call it decisive. I have no problem making a decision, but that's not the front card. I'm always going to make an attempt to love someone. I'm always going to make an attempt to give someone before myself, just not at the expense of myself. So I want coaches to keep that in mind, because it only takes 2 coaches to commiserate over here and they're both unhappy, and then they start to believe this narrative. But hey guys, bring that narrative in this room. If you've been on the inside of Firecrackers and it didn't work out for you, you are invited in this room to talk about your experience. And not to say that we're going to sit there and tell you that you're wrong. I'll admit any mistake, anything that we've learned from, because I've learned from every single team, every single coach that we've experienced. It's the constant learning curve. But we're not dependent on this perfect structure that we don't have yet for us to be successful. So I think that's really, really important. So I wanted to talk about that because I do want to encourage so many coaches, when the natural envy of what you might have, what I might have, everything is possible. Softball is a very strong business. There's lots of people spending a lot of money on what they think is the answer to their softball dream. We're just here to help them, almost like a good accountant. Shift it over here. I mean, one of the things that I would say kind of shift gears a little bit is, and this was on Tyler's podcast with Michelle Smith, she brought up the point that when she was playing, obviously they didn't play as often as we do now, but she made a statement. Games give you experience. Practice makes you better. And when there's so much emphasis on recruiting and being in the right spot, but what do you see with the players that are able to practice? And some of the best, so let's start with Cheese. All right, we talk about alumni juju, all right? Okay, so now we've got Megan over at Cal State Fullerton, arguably one of the best to ever come out of this program. Just an amazing job with her. What made her special? What makes her special?
I mean, her inner drive. You know, I mean, she's an athlete that And her nickname Cheese came from, actually my daughter Amanda gave it to her. She was at our fielding classes that we did back in the day at Ayala Park in Chino. And Amanda gave that nickname to her because she smiled all the time and said, "You're Cheese." And next thing you know, it stuck, and now she's Cheese. So, her journey, when she was in 16s, we had a really deep roster of talented outfielders. And we actually, and probably because I don't know what I'm doing, I actually put her on what would have been considered like the second team of the program, right? And Cheese didn't leave, right? Like many others would have done. She basically just told me, "You're going to fucking see me." And, maybe not the exact word of that, but she made sure she knew.
Right.
And that I knew. And that year played out, and she should have been on that team. And the next year she became on that team. We took, that team she was on took third in nationals that year in 16s, and she was part of a team that won Colorado in 18s and took third in nationals in the 18s. And a big part of it was because of her desires and competitiveness that carried that roster. I don't want to carry in the sense of talent, but just motivational wise, right? She was definitely an inspiration to others to play harder, better, longer, whatever it took to get the job done. But for me, it was knowing that. And then I got a story. So she's at Fullerton, and here 2 years ago they lost at the ASU regional, where she was the best player in that regional, and that regional had Arizona State athletes, and I'm going to forget some names. I know LSU was there, and Sierra Briggs is on the field, and there's some unbelievable athletes. San Diego State was in that same regional, and she tore it up, just dominating in the games that they played. The ultimate were eliminated, but she was just unbelievable the whole week or weekend. That next day, I'm on the phone with Coach George, and it's 10 a.m. on the Monday after that regional had ended. And he says, "Hey, bro, guess who just pulled up next to me?" And I'm like, "Who?" And he's like, it's Cheese. She's here to work out." So the Monday after they were eliminated from regionals, she showed up to work out. And I still speak that out to our athletes who all think they work hard, who all think that they've committed so much time, and not that they haven't, but understanding the levels, right? And the desires, that Cheese's level of willingness to make herself the best version of herself is something that inspires me. Because at the end of the day, we all have this 100% to achieve, knowing we'll never get there in anything in life. But how hard are we willing to work to get to close to that we can? And Megan Delgadillo gives you all of that. And that's why you see what you see from her, not only on the field, but just in life. Her passion to kind of be who she is it's fun. I'm so proud of her, obviously. So
we got one more year of your senior year.
This is her last year.
So last year at Cal State Fullerton, anybody gets a chance to watch this young lady play. She is special. She's a ticket seller. She makes things happen, and don't blink. She's the opposite of a snack bar player. And so you've got her coaching with your teams now. So she's helping out. And was that within the last year?
Yeah, came out this summer 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then kind of coached more last year, kind of helping with one of the teams, kind of running it. And then this year kind of doing more. She really wants to coach. And so, I told her for sure I want to help however I can to, give her the platforms and the opportunities. And, we have her running an alumni camp I got to talk about on the coach's call here in a couple weeks. And we're doing that a little different because typically if I'm around, she'll defer just out of the way that it kind of is. And Mike Smith, same thing. We have strong personalities. We get out on the field and, next thing you know, we're talking, right? So the idea of it is to, empower her, to give her the opportunity, like no deferring, like you structure this camp. I had her hire her own staff, all alumni kids that played for us. But I let her do it instead of me saying, "Hey, this is who I want you to use," kind of stuff. It's like, look, you know who's going to work.
Right.
I love all of our girls, but I also know not all of them probably would want to work.
Right.
They all want to get the money, but they don't want to necessarily work.
Sure.
So the idea of getting the right staff and then putting on the right thing, like this is her to do. And to me, it's the least I can do for a kid who has done everything the right way, worked her tail off, obviously been successful on the field, but has given back to us because she comes out there and every opportunity. I think the girls sometimes forget how good she is because she's just cheese, right?
She or as cheese or the
yeah,
coach or
the
whatever,
coach.
right?
And it's like, you guys don't know. Like, this is like, you're looking at one of the best players in the world. And so I'm excited for what she's going to do there. And then hopefully this is continual information and guidance for her to where when she's, coaching, whether it's hopefully in our program or at the collegiate level, like that, this all was part of her journey and development of things. And so
It's going to be fun to see if we can create. I mean, I have the confidence that we will be able to, when we create the structure that will give her a good option for when she gets sought after in college, because this kid's going to be around the game for a long time. But we've talked about her as being the type of young lady that we would love to see run the national select team, and as the select program kind of develops, because it's really in its inception right now. But she has it all, and that, when we talk about things, because this is it's been spoken about before, especially travel ball, male-dominated sport, right? I would say this to every young lady and every woman out there that wants to get into coaching. This industry can be a lot more professional. There's a lot of, the term I've learned in the last few years, emotional immaturity, right? But that's not going to stop you. The good old boys aren't going to stop you. There's no clicks. There's nothing that can stop you. In fact, please, ladies, start your own orgs. Start it. It's like, start your own teams, start your orgs, because you ultimately are the best role models for these young ladies. As we all become more aware of a professional, trained mindset, trained behavior, as opposed to just the way we act innately on the ball field, giving opportunities and creating opportunities. Especially what I like about the travel ball section, or sector, is that it's wide open as opposed to college or high school. That's very structured. This is how it is, and boom, but here you can go anywhere you want, which is something else that I think I encourage people to not just do what other people are doing because they're doing it, but always look and really kind of create your own path, because I think that's really, really possible as well too. So exciting to kind of see where Cheese is at in this transition from her last year in college and then continuing with the select program. So let's talk a little bit about the select team. So far, so good?
I think everybody's waiting for you and I to, not like each other, which I just told them that happened 13 years ago. So we don't have to worry about it happening now. But no, I think that I thought there were, there's some respected behavior, kind of with the idea of bringing in two different brands.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah. And they're like looking at you and looking at me as stepdads, and why do I listen to him if he tells me to go to bed when you're supposed to tell me to go to bed?
Or do I want a step parent telling me when to go to bed, right? So the group that you brought in, I'm their step parent. Our group, your step. If we just kind of look at it because you and I are both smart enough, and as you said, to respect that from their perspective, right?
Correct. And that's what I mean by the respected, right? There's that behavior, but now we're far enough along, whatever the right word is, far enough along, to where that's hopefully kind of all behind it. And I think you've seen that, but there's growing pains within all of it on the field, within it competitively, and even for us to kind of learn the right ways of saying things to make sure you're challenging and motivating and teaching in a way that they're going to best comprehend it, because everybody's different.
New puzzles.
New puzzles. Exactly. So the idea of that is still kind of part of it, but I think that if you're grading it, it's definitely, B+, A-, to where I would say it's there. Obviously still lots of room for improvement, and I think, and that doesn't just mean from the player side, that's from the coach's side, right? To where we can continue to grow and get better, to where we can be the best version of ourselves when we get to summer. Which is always, that's always my speech in this fall, is like, look, the fall is, the developmental opportunities on all aspects, and we want to play our best come late July and, competitively at the biggest spot. So I think it's, again, A-, B+ would be a grade.
Yeah, and this first phase is kind of, is it going to root, right? This first phase. So I really I've had a couple of short conversations or maybe statements from players that have kind of let me know where they're at. So yesterday Lola was in here and she was asking me some questions. She was working on one of her pitches, and so I started talking with her a little bit, and I just said, I asked her, I said, do you appreciate the fact that I didn't come in here, tell you to do anything, this or that? I kind of let you come to me. I said, Lola, I respect you a lot. So if you look at it like I'm your step parent in the softball team, I hope you appreciate the fact that this wasn't about here's what you're going to do and this or that. And I said, I'll be honest with you. I've had that conversation with a couple of kids that came from our end of things, that they're seeing these things because as they should be. We didn't. Not that you need to tell your kids, what you're going to do or run it by them or see if they approve. We didn't tell anybody. We just, here's what's going to happen. So even the first meeting that we had in there, and there are a lot of people. It's kind of funny when you think about it. When we put ourselves in their position, they're like, what the hell is this? Out of nowhere, now you guys, are we just supposed to, what is, pessimism, skeptical, whatever it is. And so every week, everyone's watching. And not a paranoia or anything, but look, it's a new airline, it's a new engine. This thing's got to fly a little bit. It's been a blast, and I will just say again to get back to the kind of corny aspect of things is one of the things that I'll share with you, Ben, or anyone that cares about this listening, is man, I can't tell you how many times like when we leave, his last words to me are, "I love you, bro." And it feels like family, bro. It's cool because I do love you. And it's a weird thing because it's grown over this time. But the appreciation of, my dad would talk about the foxhole, right? In World War II. But winning the battle or not, man, this is just, it's going to be a blast. And the Select program was not just a regional thing here in Southern California. So as it kind of stayed in my head, I felt like we need to be better. I need to be better. And we need to be better at recognizing the best players in the organization. Because you're okay with whatever happens. I'm okay with whatever happens. I'm not worried about protecting or losing or having to win this or that. So we've lost quite a few players to other name brand organizations because they do a good job of competing, soliciting, picking up the phone. Hey, if you're not playing for that team, come play for me. And it's never really bothered me. But after this amount of years, and then knowing some coaches that have had some players that really appreciate being firecrackers, and for whatever reason, logistically, they can't play for a Southern California team. But how can we recognize these players across the country? And so in my mind, I threw it out there. So we initiated the program. In what we'd like to see in the future is an ability to recognize and present players that our coaches feel are elite or to be recognized in that category. It's not what we're most interested in. Because we're so diverse and we love the whole group, that group has kind of been neglected, the elite, because everything's so inclusive with the whole group. It's not whether it's right or wrong. I feel like we should be better for those players. Not because we need it for us. I think those players need it. So I want our coaches to, and I've asked Sean to help me with this, to be prepared for us to deliver. And at the first of the year, we're going to have to get this going on. Maybe after this fall, who were not just your performing players, because sometimes a 475 batting average looks great on paper, and then you pull up a video, and if you just think of College World Series, Power 5, or the best of the best, that's what the Firecracker Select program is. We've started inclusive with everyone. Now, as soon as we recognize a small group of individuals or players, there's going to be those that, how come I wasn't selected, or I want to be? And so what we want to be able to offer them is that, look, there's going to be an opportunity for you to invest in yourself as a Firecracker Select player. But there's a reason why you're not. Because there's no limit on players. We could have 150 select players that we just throw up a video, and our relationships with, let's just say, the top tier coaches, that's a no-brainer, that's a no-brainer, that's a no-brainer. But now to those that want, but then if the shoe fits, we throw your video up and you get no response from top coaches. Well, maybe that's because, hey, let's clean up your running form. Let's clean up your throwing form. Let's clean up your behavior, your mindset. All of these things that people nod their head to, but they don't really invest in. I want to have that available for that next tier player too. So it's not this cutoff. You're select or you're not. Maybe you're not selected this year. Maybe next year you are. I mean, you and I can look at a video of a kid this year and say, probably not. Send us something else in 6 months. Go to the module, look at your throwing slots, look at your downward trajectory, whatever it is, and represent it to us. But figuring out that structure to where it's time efficient, but also gives us an opportunity to recognize everyone. So that's kind of where we'd like to go and get to the point to where we could have the select players in this organization play together a couple of times a year. So now not extract them from the team or region that they're in, because that's important to that team. So if we take them off of that team, now that coach kind of loses their best player. But to be able to maybe bring them into something like the Patriot Games or something. So we'll figure that as we kind of go on. But, that's kind of the thoughts with the Select program. You're pretty well aware of the talent that we have across the board in the organization. It's getting up there, right?
Yes, and to me, I think you look at it as opportunity, right? This provides an opportunity for all these kids to get to be around things that can hopefully make an impact in them, make them better, learn the game, maybe see it from a different view. So it's not so much that their coaches or their program haven't and aren't providing what it is needed, as much as saying, like, look, we have, again, going back to kind of that template that you've built, like, you have the ability to be able to benefit and help that coach, to be able to benefit and help those athletes. And I think the Select program is going to provide that in a kind of the bigger scale, to where our organization will be honestly kind of starting to represent itself to the way that an organization really in theory should. Yeah. And I think, whether it was you and I kind of understanding like the time was right to make sure that this is that step, and again, led by your thoughts, but is knowing like, hey, this is going to be not only a good thing for this year, but this is ultimately going to make a big difference, I think, as you go down the road. Like, you're going to really see it start to grow and to make an impact over the next handful of years, probably next 4 or 5 years.
Well, and if something happens, like, you and I are on the road and we get hit by a truck for whatever reason, that there's something that we're leaving behind that, that can continue. So I think that's really important. So last thing I want to talk about, because does that mean we're on 15% battery up there? Is that? I see that. Oh. I see that. So probably want to keep an eye on that, engineer man. So all right. So we're getting down there, and
come on, Baba.
So you and I have now. That is good, right? That's there. That's a good one. Baba Booey. So now the last thing we'll talk about is kind of a project that you and we talk about uniting, collaborating, making an attempt to make things better. And so now you and I have joined forces. We are part of what is called the PCFL, the Pacific Coast Fast Pitch League. As you mentioned last year, nobody knows PCFL. And the Alliance, right? It's really not about so much the Alliance and that whole bigger picture of that, and not a pitch for those companies, but what has it been like, and what have you got to know, or maybe you knew already, because we've had the opportunities now to work with a couple guys, Mike Stith and Marty Tyson, and I'll just say for myself personally, working here next to Mike, I've learned a lot about those guys. And you talk about perception of what people think on the outside and what they see, but what's that been like for you so far?
I was the young guy on the board or whatever, we are, right, board within the PCFL, and to be able to have the opportunity, which I'm genuinely very honored and proud of, and then to be able to have a voice within the things that we discuss and present, but to go to Mike and Marty is to see their passion for the sport. So again, it kind of goes back to where we started with you and what you had in a vision and what you've helped create, and then even seeing them as it's not just about them, it's about the sport. And they love the sport. They want the better for the sport. And I don't know if every person has that in their minded interest, but I can tell you that I know Mike does, and I know Marty does, and obviously I know you do. And I think that to me has been my biggest takeaway. And then, their willingness to work. They're never afraid. Mike Stith is never afraid to go to work. And that's an understatement. So there's obviously respect automatically, just because the guy is gonna what he says he's gonna do. And he does it. And he does it with his own hands. So there's, and then the level of respect that they've shown to myself. Because again, on the scale of things, I'm the young kid and I'm nobody. But you can tell if it's there and or if it's just kind of cosmetic. And again, I feel good that it was an earned respect. Absolutely. That it wasn't just like, hey, we're going to let Sean in the room. It was like, hey, this guy has earned this, right? But they are about our sport. Right. And to me, that's when people ask me the question, because I still feel like people will maybe say things to me, I think I've told you this before, that they wouldn't say to you, or they wouldn't say to Mike, just because you guys are, can't talk to you guys. Right. It's like, why aren't you, why do you stay there? Why do you do this? And it's like, because, and again, it comes back to knowing what the true core of this is. This is about the sport. This is about the future of our sport. This is about the athletes in our sport. And it's not about an event. It's not about a nationals. It's about our sport. And if people can get an understanding that the full commitment to making the sport better takes a lot, right? And it takes a lot of time. And even if you look at the depth of what Alliance is, showing, is it's not about an event. It's about our sport, and it's about giving from our sport back to our sport, from those that have played our sport to those that want to play our sport, to hopefully continuing to grow our sport. And for me, that is led because of the drive of yourself, and again, Mike, who's a working maniac, right? And then Marty's passion. Like, there's no one more entertaining than Marty, right? I get popcorn going.
What about his depth though, bro? I'm not surprised by it, but and people will be like, "Get out of here, Rico!" Like, we just see this out there in the field. That's exactly what Marty wants you.
He'll
to
try
see.
to sell himself
This guy
short on
gets
certain
it.
things, but Marty is very much aware of everything that he's doing and why he's doing it and what he sees for others. And that's the reason why Marty Tyson's so successful.
And there's not, well, and that's a good point. That his success is not an accident, as is Mike's, right?
No.
I mean, that's very obvious. We've just been fortunate to be on the inside of the working room with them. Obviously, we've been on the field, and that's where we really earn their respect. I couldn't have brought you in or provided that opportunity if I didn't know they had that respect for you. So I knew they did. So now what I'm going to say, even on this podcast nationally, is you're in the room. But move that ball, Sean. Like, move that ball. Don't wait for us. Don't wait for anything. Like, move that ball the way you've moved your own ball, the way I've asked you to move the ball for the Firecrackers. Like, your parameters are not fixed. Like, you have an ability to really affect the sport. And I'm going to say, if not at the same level that we have, even more so. And I would say, for me, because you execute structure so well and you're so organized. And so, in theory, for me, I believe you could get more done. And with our help, because it's kind of like Jamie, low price. With our support, she can get a lot more done because she's a ball mover. And when we do what we do with her, she moves that ball even better. So I want you to kind of realize that. And for me, being inside this room with these guys, respect, it feels great. I'm going to say even there's a good feeling to our culture. So it's like a ball game. Bro, I don't know if we're going to win or lose. I just know how we're going to play against you, or how I'd like us to play against you. And if we do that, I'm good. Win or lose the fight, we're going to earn some respect afterwards. And that's really all we're doing with Alliance and PCFL, that I would like people to know that there is a group, and if there are more groups, great, that do care about people. We do appreciate people. And contrary to extreme popular belief, this isn't a money grab. This isn't about, like, if they actually knew, like, the structure of things, people will go, I think Tim had said this once, from a business standpoint, these guys are really bad business people, because they don't even know how to maximize profit. They just get involved in things and they become part of the ownership, but it's really about giving back. So I am really, really excited for what's coming around the next corner. So lastly, with you, what are you excited for coming up? 2024 coming up, got the year coming. We know it's going to fly by. What are you excited about?
On a personal level, probably be getting married, so we'll see when that date.
That ranks pretty high.
There's no.
Can we give her a shout out, because you didn't mention her name unless you're there?
Candace.
There you go, Candace.
So,
there you go. Shout out to Candace.
And we have dinner reservations, so she's probably gonna be looking at me here soon or texting me. But on the softball side of it, again, would be the opportunity for what we're working on, the select program, to see where it starts to continue to grow and prosper. Because I feel like where we left it off was at a good place, in the sense of kind of we hit some turbulence, so it's almost good not to do too good.
Right.
So there's enough there to kind of.
Well, I personally am good at that. So.
Yeah. So maybe this is my way of safeguarding this for us. But I'm really excited about getting to summer play, and really seeing where this team and where really what we are going to be able to do together as a team and as a program. And I think that will help set its own kind of organizationally and for select, because I think the selects program is, like I said, I think this is something that this first year everyone's taking a look to see what it means and what we're doing, and if we're extracting players, because everyone's so protective. I had that even within me. I remember Bill Hicks, and
right.
Rest his soul, he's a great man. The first thing he said is, "Are you going to take my players?" Everyone's so protective. So the understanding of
and that happens a lot in softball.
Right. Exactly. So knowing now, okay, this isn't about taking players. This is about identifying and honestly respecting the players, right? Because you would want to be able to provide to the players the best opportunities and the best abilities to grow who they are as a player and as a person. And I think knowing that the program is built to do that, and it's not just about, hey, go here, go there. And like what you described, maybe it's a weekend, maybe it's a camp. You did that infielders camp, so where we can really make impacts on these athletes. I feel like those type of things are things where, again, the wait and see, what is this about? Why are they doing it? Is there some, hidden and again, it's not like we're literally, I don't want to say making it up as we go, but we're literally
that's what we've always done.
Making it up.
But that goes back to being 12, making up a wiffle ball game, or how are we going to, we're at a wedding reception. How are we going to get the game going here? So it's the same type of creativity that we're doing that. I'm very empathetic to those coaches that, are you going to take my players? Like, I don't want anyone to feel like that. If I can't put something back, if I can't take this and put something back of equal or potential same value, it's not right. They don't feel good about that. And that's, hopefully people see that inside our kind of our history with this organization. I think that's a big step for coaches to understand is empathy, right? So it doesn't mean you have to agree with someone across the table, but empathize means you can put yourself in their position. And I'm constantly looking at us from outside. So whether it's a player inside this organization, player outside the organization, a coach out, people that know us, people that don't know us, like what are these different perceptions of us, and how can we just tell a real story that just kind of works? So thanks for your time today.
Yep. And I would ask you, what's your
for this? Thank you. Yeah. I got to be honest with you, man. So like you said, the select team, the integration of all our coaches. So Lon's done an amazing job, and everyone has to prove themselves, right? So integrating Lon and Holly with our pitching development, keeping the good old boys, Kenny, Don, and Jim relevant to everything to keep them kind of going. But really this, and then obviously, it's a big group, but I'm excited about the continued progress with the select team. I got to be honest with you, I'm super proud of Holly and what she's done with the pitching, with the Range Pitching Academy. She's killing it with social media. So we're creating change, and it's just another exciting venture. So it's kind of like we're creating a new wiffle ball game or something else. So the Range has been really exciting. I think there's just still the wide open frontier that we deal with, I think still is very intriguing to me because we're far from being saturated. I think there's a lot of things still to be done, but at the same time, not spread ourselves all over the place so we can't execute a couple things. But I appreciate you asking. So, Big Ben, Sean, thanks you guys. I'm going to finish this with something that I hear pretty much at the end of every weekend, and that is, love you guys.
Love you guys.
We're back. All right.
Absolutely.
And there it is. Go Lucas.